What are you doing?
Filming.
Pictures of us?
Yeah.
Can I get your badge number?
0016.
Cool.
Is it shiny enough for you?
It's very shiny, sir.
All right. Give me your driver's license, Mr. Fifth Amendment rights.
You filming right now?
I am.
How come?
He's got a camera on. He's got a camera on me right now as we're talking.
And welcome once again to ifoughtthelaw.info. This is, I believe, our fourth episode, and we have a great guest today. I'm looking very forward to introducing you to him. You may notice it's been a while since an episode has run. The reason for that is because, contrary to the popular myth, we protesters don't want to be doing this. We activists do not want to be doing this. We have other things we'd rather be doing, and we're not getting paid by Soros. We're here because things are going on that are scaring the hell out of us, and a lot of us have had direct experiences with these things. So we have lives, and I myself, this ifoughtthelaw.info is something that I do when I have time. Unfortunately, there are other things like putting food in my mouth and whatnot that I have to prioritize first. So the episodes are rather sporadic. This episode is going to be the last one for probably 3 weeks because I am doing a lot of traveling right now, and I'm dealing with unreliable Wi-Fi connections and such, and it's just I want to wait to do the next one until I'm back home where I know what the Wi-Fi situation is going to be like and everything else. So that having been said, on to today's show. Today's show is such an important one, and our guest is extremely important because our guest is really good at what this show is about. He trains people in what we're going to be talking about today, and I have attended his trainings personally. I've seen how he works. I've seen how he explains this to people, and he does it phenomenally. So I'm very excited to have him here. What we're going to be talking about today is cop watching and filming police, which is, as we know, we've seen lately, cameras just seem to have a way of somehow malfunctioning or not being on when police are in these questionable situations, or the police departments won't release the footage, and we have to take their word for it, which kind of defeats the purpose. And there's other reasons it's important, which I'll let our guest explain, but he's going to talk about how to do this safely, how to deal with when the police harass you, why this is so important. He's going to explain how to do it right, because if you do it wrong, what you capture is useless in a court of law and may even be useless for media purposes. So all of these things he's going to bring together. My guest is Andrew Henderson. He is the president of Minnesota CopWatch. Andrew, how you doing today?
Excellent, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. I'm excited about this. You know, I've been thinking about this for a while, and I'm glad we were able to make a time here and get this going. So I'll dive right into it with you. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, the cop watching activities you do, and how you got into it. Sure.
Well, I should start off saying that I am the founder of Minnesota Cop Block. I am the CopWatch coordinator for Communities United Against Police Brutality, and I do tons of stuff on my own. How I got into this is I grew up in the Frogtown area of St. Paul, which is a predominantly African-American neighborhood. And there was a lot of police activity in that neighborhood. People got treated different than they do in, say, you know, a more gentrified or whiter neighborhood. And I saw this growing up all my life. I mean, I wasn't picked on because, you know, I was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white kid. So the police treated me different than they treated my African-American or Asian or Mexican friends. And later in life, I lived in the North End area of St. Paul. And when I was living there, I saw a gentleman walking down the street who was stopped by the police. The police pepper sprayed him, and when he was on the ground choking, I don't know if you've ever been pepper sprayed before, But that stuff is nasty. It makes your lungs feel like they're burning. You're just coughing. Your eyes are watering. And when this guy was on the ground, just in pain, a police officer kicked him square in the chest. He wasn't resisting. He was just laying there coughing. And somebody captured that with their cell phone, and that hit the news really hard. And I decided at that point in time that the way to expose some of this misconduct from police officers was to start filming them, to hold them accountable in that manner. So that's how I got my start, filming police and keeping them accountable.
Fantastic. So now today you're doing this. How often do you go out? Where do you go? Tell us a little bit about the training you do and that sort of thing.
Sure. That's a little bit of a tough question to answer. I used to regularly go out and film police officers engaged in their duties. I used to go downtown a lot, on Hennepin Avenue, bar closed, stuff like that, where police were harassing people at an alarming rate. Homeless shelters was another thing I used to hit up a lot. Nowadays, I'm busy with work and school and the family and all that. I don't have the time that I used to, but I'll still cop watch whenever I see an activity. If I see something going down, I'll stop and film it. If I'm driving down the street and someone's pulled over, I'll go park off to a side street and just walk up with my video camera, just to keep that scene safe. So I try to do it as often as possible. My main focus right now is education, to educate others to do what I do in their own communities. So I hold CopWatch trainings with Communities United Against Police Brutality every so often. And that's open to the public. That's always free. Communities United Against Police Brutality has meetings every Saturday at 1:30 at 4200 Cedar Avenue in South Minneapolis. So if you're in Minneapolis, I suggest you go check out a meeting and learn more about CopWatch and a whole bunch of other ways to keep police accountable and stuff like that.
Fantastic. You so you've been doing these trainings, and I know when I left the cities, I was definitely seeing the results of that. We're seeing, there's more people out cop watching now and filming cops, so hats off to you for that. And people who aren't in Minneapolis and can't go to Communities United Against Police Brutality meeting, but maybe don't know in their town who they can go to get information on this. You have a website where you have this information, and you have a Twitter account, and you have a Facebook account, and you're reachable. Could you explain to people how they can do that, how they can access these things or reach you with questions? Sure.
Well, I'd first like to point out my website, which is www.TheDrewks, TheDrewks.com. I have a Know Your Rights section on there, section about filming the police, a section about the CopWatch conference that I went to, jury nullification, a whole bunch of other great things that people should check out. There's just tons of resources, tons of videos, app suggestions. That's a great place. My Twitter is @TheDrewks, same spelling. I don't post too much on there. Facebook is probably my biggest media outlet. And if you want to find me at Facebook, it's facebook.com/TheDrewks, TheDrewks. And I put out just a ton of information there.
Cool, and I certainly hope people will use that and reach you. I know I've known you personally for a while, and I know that you definitely, you kind of live for this. You kind of live for empowering people in this area. So, I definitely encourage people, reach out to this guy. He's definitely here for you. This is what he's about. So, now let's talk about why cop watching is so important. The reasons why, I mean, I mentioned a couple things, but there's a lot more than that. And why don't you just go ahead and run us through why this is so necessary for the person sitting on the fence? Well, maybe I should, but I don't know. There's other people doing it. Why should that person get involved?
Sure. As this last case here in Minneapolis shows that the police are not using their own cameras. They're not using their body cameras. They're not turning on their dash cameras. So the solution that I present is for citizens to record police-citizen encounters. It can be your own. It can be somebody else's. That way there is an objective record of that interaction taking place. If the police do something wrong, you've caught it. I mean, there's no disputing video evidence, especially live streaming evidence. Personally, I will use my camera plus live streaming, but I will never go like Facebook Live or openly live stream my stuff due to the fact that I believe that going live stream like that puts the community in danger. If you're live streaming an interaction between the police and the citizen does something that might not be right, you're basically being a tattletale for the police at that point in time. Your job as a cop watcher is not to help the police. It is to keep the police in check. They have enough resources on their end to investigate crimes. You don't need to help them. So that's how I feel about that. I don't know. The way that I see it is we see these really bad interactions by police to citizens just about every day. I mean, you can look on your Facebook feed, newspapers, whatever, and you'll see a news story every day about some kind of misconduct from a police employee. I mean, it's an epidemic. I personally am more scared of a police officer than I am of some supposed gang member on the corner. I mean, the way I look at it is who has taken more from you, the police officer or the supposed gang member on the corner. For me, at least, it's the police. I mean, they've taken my property, my freedoms, stuff like that. I've never been robbed like that from a gang member. And if I am robbed from a gang member, there is I have some way of retrieving what was taken from me. If I have my wallet stolen, I can go to court over that. With the police, it's almost impossible.
Right, they do take a lot of, they do take personal possessions. I've had my driver's license taken before, showed the officer my driver's license as requested, and then my driver's license, all, at the end of the encounter, I was like, well, I don't have my driver's license. This is great, because that's actually a misdemeanor to not carry your driver's license. Now, people, you did mention something that as a cop watcher, it's not your job to help the police. And I know there's people out there who will take issue with that statement. But I think it's important to point out that there are so many unjust, unconstitutional laws on the books right now being enforced that, it's almost like the price of existing. Police are going to get you with a ticket somewhere for something. I mean, it's almost orchestrated so that at certain times, you can't avoid doing something that's going to get you a ticket, and they're there and they're ready to ticket you. So, police, I think what you're saying is police get us often enough, and they get money out of us often enough. There's no need to help them with that, because we are right now really being more exploited than protected by the criminal justice system. Is that right?
That is exactly my point. When you enter the criminal justice system, the police have just about unlimited funds to try to prosecute you. You have many police officers, investigators, prosecutors, all going after one person, where the citizen has to defend themselves with their own funds, their own knowledge. The books are stacked against the common citizen every time. I mean, the average person walking down the street doesn't have the money to defend themselves against any kind of charges. I mean, that's why most people take a plea deal when they go to court, is because they can't afford it. They can't afford to take the time off of work to hire a lawyer to try to beat charges. Where the criminal justice system, that's what they get paid to do. I mean, if a cop has to show up in court, they get paid overtime for that. If a citizen has to show up in court, they have to take a day off of work. I mean, it's stacked against the citizen. So I don't see any reason to try to help the police employees perform their job.
Right. So basically, what's going on as far as why it's so important is just the fact that police aren't using their body cams when they should be a lot of the time, and we're not being allowed to look at footage a lot of the time. Is there anything else going on there that makes it important to CopWatch, in your opinion?
Yeah, From my experiences, I mean, I have tons of videos on my YouTube channel, which you can find at youtube.com/TheDrewks, of police officers showing up for something, and then myself trying to get the report for that incident, and the incident's not even there. They didn't log it. They didn't report that they stopped the person. So. They're pretty much running around with no accountability whatsoever, and that to me is scary. If a police officer can force someone to the side of the road or in handcuffs at gunpoint, and there's no record of that ever happening, I mean that's scary to me. I don't know how you feel about that, but I'm not down with that.
It terrifies the hell out of me, actually. Because. Well, you know a little bit about my background. I was a victim of some pretty awful police brutality, and then because I had no documentation of anything, I went through a really bad time in the courts. It was even worse than being assaulted, a very long process, and so you're absolutely right. It needs to be. It needs to be documented. I like that you said, they're not just turning off their cameras, but sometimes they're not documenting anything altogether.
Right.
So there's no record that any of this happened. Not even their version of the story exists to be, for an attempt at critical analysis. So cop watching is a relatively new phenomenon. About when did it start, and when did you see it really kind of gain ground as a movement? And when you look to the future, where do you think it's going? Do you see new technologies emerging that people should be watching that'll help, and that sort of thing?
Well, I mean, the earliest that people really can trace active cop watching to is Berkeley in the 1980s. That's kind of where it started. I mean, people with really big video cameras or even just notepads and a pen, just writing down cops' names and squad car numbers, stuff like that. And it's transformed today to people with their cell phones or better video cameras. And I mean, I see it just growing more and more. People are waking up to the fact that there are police employees out there that are wreaking havoc in the cities, that are putting innocent people in jail, that are planting evidence like we've seen in Baltimore. That's been going on forever. I mean, people are waking up to the fact that there are tons of innocent people, rotting in cages because of bad actions of police employees who want to advance their careers, to look better, to feel needed. So I think the future just brings more and more people pulling out their cell phones when they see something going down. Like not too long ago here in Minneapolis, there was a police employee on a light rail questioning an individual about their citizenship status, which they can't. That's not part of their job. Thankfully, this individual was released from jail not too long ago. But that police employee's wrong actions could have caused a person to have been deported. It's a lot of peaceful people ending up in cages over very minor things or even nothing, where the police employee will make up something. So I just see the future of cop watching is your average day citizen just pulling out their cell phone. I can think of just tons of examples off the top of my head where it's just been a person with a cell phone that the cell phone evidence totally contradicted the police officer's story, and that's going to happen more and more. And the one good thing is it's somewhat fleshing out the bad cops. But it is keeping everybody accountable. There's an objective record now, which we didn't have years ago. I mean, like I said, back in the 80s in Berkeley with the big cameras, those things cost thousands of dollars. It was very hard for the average person to have a video camera. Nowadays, just about everybody does right in their pocket, which is absolutely wonderful. And I don't know. I see the future more live streaming, more off-site storage of footage. I personally use a program called Bambuser, Bambuser, to live stream my stuff because it keeps it at an off-site storage that the police cannot access. You can set it to go fully live or just so you can see it. And I do that just in case and I also recommend this for other people to do, in case your cell phone is taken as, quote, evidence or destroyed by a police officer, or if you end up in jail. If you end up in jail and you need that footage right away, you can give your attorney your username and password to the Bambuser website, and they can pull up the video. Where if it was just stored on your cell phone, they could take out the memory card, destroy your cell phone, throw it in the river, whatever like that, and then it's just your word against theirs. So I think live streaming is going to be the next big paradigm shift in cop watching.
Now, drones are becoming something that's becoming much more affordable, and the run times on the cameras are longer. I've heard people talk about drones. I mean, I see upsides and downsides. What do you think of drones, using drones for cop watching? I mean, I can think of one obvious advantage. You're not in the physical proximity of a cop, but any thoughts on all these video drones that are being made now?
There's positives and negatives to that. The biggest negative that I can think of offhand is the cost. I mean, I can't afford a drone, and I don't think most people could afford a drone, especially a good drone. Second of all is the noise with the drone. You can't get too close to hear what they're saying because the rotors on the drone are pretty loud. I've had some experience with drones when I worked with a couple people, David Witt and God, what's his name? Out of St. Louis, We CopWatch, and you can check them out at WeCopWatch.org. They have a drone that I got to play with, and yeah, you can't get too close to the action with that drone. But it's great for overhead views. I think more people will start getting drones for cop watching, but it will be used more as an overview than an actual, capturing what's going on up close, voices, stuff like that. But yeah, I definitely think that's going to become more of a normality in the coming years.
So, in your opinion, drones are more useful for maybe flying over a protest and kind of capturing more large-scale movements, or being a supplemental camera to somebody on the ground,
Definitely.
getting... Okay, cool.
Yeah.
You mentioned about police and their body cameras, and how a lot of times they turn them off or they don't document something. We had Michelle Gross on here, who you work with a lot because she's the president of Communities United Against Police Brutality, and she pointed out something that I actually really saw played out on a YouTube video as well, and that's that even when cops have their body cameras on, they show what the person is, they show the person's reaction. They don't show what the person may be reacting to. And I saw a thing, I think it was in Phoenix, where cops had this homeless guy and he was naked, so he was obviously in some kind of distress. And they were talking to him and telling him, let us help you, come on up, And so he did, and then when he got up there, and we're watching this through the cop's body camera, and when he got up there, they were like telling him, put your hands up or put your hands on your head. I can't remember, but I was like, okay, so, and I saw him, and he was starting to cooperate with them. And then all of a sudden, his eyes got wide, and he took his hands down and said no, and refused to. And so they sicked a dog on him, and the dog just mauled the hell out of him, this naked guy, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember, like, he was down, and he was definitely, he had definitely had enough, and they just let the dog keep going, which was just awful. But the main thing was, I saw the guy's eyes get wide. To me, it indicates the officer took a threatening stance, that the situation was de-escalating, and the officer made a gesture or took a stance, maybe raised up his shotgun or whatever, something. That guy saw something that scared the hell out of him, and we will never know what it was, because the only camera we have was on the guy, not on that cop.
Right, yeah, and I mean, it would be great to know what else transpired there, what scared the guy. Without a camera pointing at the police employee, we don't know. And that's a great argument of why CopWatch is needed. Why someone with just pointing a camera or a cell phone could change the outcome of that.
Right. And, like you said, it's an objective record. I mean, Aren't cops telling us all the time, what are you afraid of if you have nothing to hide? Well, likewise, what are they afraid of if they have nothing to hide? On the People's Weekly, we had Pastor Mac V made a really good point that, when he's preaching, when he's doing his job, he wants cameras on him because he's confident he's going to do a good job, and he wants to be seen doing a good job. And if cops are doing their job the right way, why wouldn't they want to be seen doing their jobs the right way? But oftentimes that's not true, which we'll get into when we talk about how to protect yourself and know your rights. But that's a thing that's going on. Like, people shouldn't take cop watching as an anti-cop thing, because if cops are doing their job right, you're not going to capture anything wrong.
Right. Yeah. To me, a good cop watching experience is one where I just delete the video, where nothing happens, where nobody's mistreated. I'd much rather have that than a viral YouTube video. I mean, the reason people cop watch is not just to capture bad cops doing bad things. It's to deter. If you have a camera pointed at you, you're much less likely to engage in misconduct that you know might end up on the 5 o'clock news. Just having a camera there could totally diffuse the situation. There's plenty of times where I walked up with a camera and cops have just left just because they just don't want that attention. They don't want their mistakes recorded, so their easiest way out of it is just to leave.
Right, and I like what you said about it being a deterrent. Not only does it help people who've been victimized, but it does stop bad behavior. It does stop people from being victimized. There's a lot of that going on now, where Tim can tell you about countless times where he goes out and he cop watches. And he's had cops doing stuff, and then suddenly they see him, and, the cop will nudge his partner, and suddenly they're talking differently. Tim talked about how he put cameras in his car because in LA, cops harass activists. In Minneapolis, you guys kind of have that figured out. You've got it where cops really just don't want to harass you. But in LA, it's a completely different thing. Cops are not afraid to harass activists, and they harass the hell out of them. They harass the hell out of Tim all the time. And he's getting pulled over, and he's getting harassed, and he's had them come up to his car and start doing the cocky shit that they do to intimidate him, and all of a sudden they see the cameras in his car, and their demeanor completely changes.
Right.
I'm right about that, right, Tim? Like, that's happened a lot with you.
Yeah, or they'll shine the light on me and try to get me to leave. The last time I was telling you about was kind of the oddest, because he assumed, like you said, I was trying to get some kind of viral video. And he's like, and they left the lady alone and walked away, and I was live streaming. It was on Twitter. He's like, sorry you didn't get anything good. And I said, just what you said. I said, this is great. Everyone walked away. She's safe. That's all I was here for.
Mm-hmm.
So, they have some twisted, and then the cops start telling me, I'm a YouTube sensation. I've been on YouTube so many times and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, definitely, as soon as the camera's on them, once they notice it, a lot of times they change, but they always notice the camera at one point, and they have to tell their partner there's a camera. It's like, why? Why do you have to tell them? If you're good cops, because all cops are good cops, right? Why do you care if there's a camera? Why do you have to inform your partner there's a camera? And that always just blows my mind. And it's every single time, almost without exception.
Right. Now, we need to talk about the two most important parts of this segment, which is how to do this right and how to do it safely, because what most people don't think about, and I didn't even think about until you and Michelle pointed this out to me, Andrew, is if you don't collect your footage the right way, it's useless to everybody.
Right.
It's useless in court. It's useless. The news won't take it and show it. And so it's very important that people follow certain steps and that people do certain things and people, respect certain protocols. So we went kind of fast through all that other stuff. That's because I wanted to leave a good hour and 20 minutes for how to do this right and how to do it safely. So let's start on the process of how to do it right. What are the rules and protocol? And then if you can just kind of walk us through a typical scenario where you're going to go and do this, what you need to be doing.
Sure. Yeah. I'll probably get into like a team CopWatch thing first, and then go more towards sporadic CopWatch later on, if that's fine with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of, you train people in this stuff. Just go ahead and follow kind of the direction you usually go as you take people through this stuff.
Definitely. So I don't think there's any real right way to CopWatch. I would rather have people getting out there no matter what. I can walk you through how I do it and how I train people and how I think is the best way. But what works for my community may not work for yours or other people's. You have to make your own choice of what you want to do in your community. So the way that I do it in my community and that way that I train others to do it in surrounding communities is to get a group of people together. You'll want a lead person with a camera, and you'll want a backup person with a camera to record the lead person in case anything happens to that lead person. And you can have more people. You can have people, walking around passing out know your rights information. That's a great thing to carry with you when you're out cop watching is, a little know your rights cards that tell people their rights and stuff like that. It's a great way to interact with the community to not look you're out there trying to just capture trouble or something like that, or because often you'll walk up on an incident and you have a camera and the person being investigated by the police employees doesn't know why you're there. At least that was the case a few years ago. It may have changed a little now because people are understanding why there's people out there filming the police. But if you say, hey, I'm here, just keeping the police officer in check, and you hand them a know your rights card, that totally changes their demeanor. They now realize that you're there for them, that you're there to help them, and that your intent is to record the police officer and to hold them accountable, not get them in trouble for whatever the police officer is accusing them of. So that to me is a really important thing. Another thing that people should do is always stay in contact with each other when they're out cop watching. It's easy nowadays with text messaging, cell phones, stuff like that. Back in the day, people had to do this with walkie-talkies and stuff like that, and it was a little harder. Some people choose to go out wearing CopWatch shirts or like orange or yellow vests, stuff like that with identifying labels on them that says CopWatch or something on that. I have done that in the past. It makes it a lot easier for people to understand what's going on. If you have a shirt that says CopWatch on it, they'll get it more. They'll understand that you're not working with the police, that you're helping them. I personally recommend not to get involved in this situation. Your job as a cop watcher is not to yell at the police. It's not to try to intimidate the police. It's just to capture that the interaction as peacefully as possible. I mean, you don't have to get involved in something that might be above your head that you don't totally understand. Like there's times that I've walked up on situations where I thought it was a cop harassing someone, but it turned out to be medical attention. So it probably wouldn't have been the best to yell at the police at that point in time. So it's probably best to just stand back and just film. And that also helps out in court. Because if you're out there yelling at a police officer and swearing at them, the jury's mind may be a little changed by that. So it's best just to pretty much keep quiet. There are some things that you should say on film, though. You should call out squad car numbers if you can, the time of day, the date it happened, badge numbers if you can see them. If you're in a place where you really don't know where you are, you can call it landmarks. You can say, hey, we're outside of, Bob's Pizza Parlor. And that can help get the location where it was taking place. And there are many community organizations that if you come to them and say, hey, at 8:15 on Tuesday outside of Bob's Pizza, I saw this incident happen. Those organizations can go down and pull up some data, some police reports on that incident, and find out more about what happened. Find out who you recorded, and get that video to their attorney if something should happen. So that's one of my big things right there. Is just kind of remain just quiet, not interacting. Definitely afterwards, you should try to talk to the person that the police employee was investigating or whatever, and hand them a know your rights card and introduce yourself. One thing that I really like to do is offer them a copy of the content I captured in case they want it. It's really easy to burn something onto a CD or a flash drive or even email it to them. So that to me really would calm someone down and help them, because if they might not want a copy of it on the spot, because they might be shooken up because they just had a police interaction, but maybe later they'd want that footage for whatever purpose they want. If they want to fight something in court, or if they just want to have it. I mean, if you spent the time to record that police interaction, the least you can do is send the person that you recorded a copy of the footage.
Right. That's they're going to need it, So you have people out, and you have a lead camera, and then you have a backup camera. Ideally, you have people handing out know your rights flyers too, which is a good thing, because then in addition to the two cameras, there's other witnesses around as well. And one thought that occurs to me when you talk about people handing out flyers is it does, when somebody's walking by and they get a flyer, it does say, hey, remember that problem with police brutality you've been hearing about? And remember the, well, that might be happening here. So pay attention, so it gets more eyes on the situation. And it just reminds people that there's a problem, and the problem's so bad that people are actually taking time out of their day and going out with cameras, which there's other things we'd all rather be doing.
Right.
Because this is such a problem. So I really like the whole thing of handing out the flyers, having people there handing out flyers in addition to the thing with two cameras. Now, you have two cameras. Typically, the lead camera person is safe because there's another camera on them. Have you seen cops still in that situation try to thwart that situation, or is that a pretty secure thing, or is there other things people can do as well and should do in order to? I don't know. I guess I've never gone out myself with another person, so I don't know. I know that would make the situation safer. How much safer does it make it? And is there other things you should do as well to ensure safety at that point?
Sure. I mean, in my opinion, it makes it a lot safer just because you have that backup. I have acted both as lead and second camera person many times. If I'm second camera person, I'll step back quite a bit. Like I don't want to be noticed as that second camera person, just in case something happens to that first camera person. People can get right up in there, or they can hold back. I mean, to me, it's all what a person is comfortable with themselves. I mean, some people are comfortable getting 5 feet away from an incident. Some people are more comfortable sitting in their car and just having it on their dashboard. To me, it's all up to the individual. I would never press someone to do anything that they weren't absolutely comfortable with. But I've seen it a lot. I've seen the police interactions go a lot smoother when there's more visible cameras to capture any potential misconduct. So I would recommend, someone being 10 feet away from what's going on and someone being about 30 feet away from what's going on. This, the second camera person about 30 feet away. And I've seen that thwart more bad actions than anything else. Because they know if they take away... Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Finish your thought, then I'll ask.
Sure. Because they know if they take away that first person's camera, there's a second camera capturing that happening, and it just they're not likely to risk that image of them, like I said, being on the 5 o'clock news. It's just something that they just don't want.
And with live streaming today, would you say like a person doesn't really have to worry about if they're on second camera, they don't really have to worry about it being visible, because like cops are aware of the possibility that video might be live? Because like a thought that jumped into my head right away when I first heard about 2 cameras is well, if the cops go after the first camera, they're already going someplace they shouldn't. Are they going to go after the second camera? Is that an experience that you've ever had or you've ever seen, or is that something that a person really shouldn't be too concerned about? I've never had that experience personally. I've seen it on video. I've only had my camera taken away one time, and one thing that I've learned is to always live stream in some way. Sometimes I'll just have it live, a cell phone live streaming in my pocket, just to record the audio. But live streaming is definitely something I recommend to use in conjunction with just regular taking video. Even if it's that person, that second camera, great. Or even if it's a camera in your pocket or a cell phone in your pocket, live streaming, great. Live streaming is absolutely necessary nowadays, just because police officers are taking away cameras. They have, and they'll continue to. So yeah, live streaming is an essential part of CopWatch right now, I think. And since you mentioned live streaming again, earlier you had talked about using Bamboozer. I know for a lot of people, the live stream service of choice is Livestream. You definitely prefer Bamboozer. What from what I understand, they're both good services, but in your opinion, what are the advantages and disadvantages of each, just to kind of help people figure out? And then is there other live streaming services people can consider?
There are tons of live streaming services out there. I recommend Bamboozer just because it has a really simple user interface, and it has never malfunctioned on me. I've had other services malfunction on me or shut down or not capture certain things. Audio quality is also a huge thing to me. I like good audio quality, just because if that's used in court, you want the jury to hear what's being said. So that's why I choose Bamboozer myself. If someone wants to live stream with a different service, that's totally fine. I'm not going to chastise them for that at all. As long as they're using a live stream service, that's, to me, all that matters. It's just I prefer Bamboozer just from my user experience.
Okay. And then I'm wondering, when you're live streaming, is there anything that you do with your phone to make the live stream more effective, to make sure that the live stream isn't breaking up, between you and wherever it's going? Anything to get stronger signal strength or anything like that people can consider doing?
Like if I'm going out actively cop watching in a group, I'll bring a battery backup with me and plug it into my cell phone just to make sure that I don't run out of batteries on it. That's the thing that's happened to me in the past. I've learned to carry a battery backup with me for those instances. there's no real way to improve signal strength in some areas. Some areas you just kind of, have to go with whatever you can get for a signal. Unfortunately, there's no real signal boosters that are easy to carry with you. You know what I mean? So I just say bring a battery backup. Make sure you don't run out of battery. That's a huge thing, especially if you're like live streaming from like a protest or something like that. You'll want that battery backup because your phone will drain very quickly live streaming.
Okay, and when you are recording, what is kind of generally the distance you should go no closer? Because I mean, there is a distance where the cops cannot just say that you're in the way, but you might actually, they might actually have something to stand on. They can show, well, this person was here and we were trying to do this and this person was in the way, and it might actually stick. So what's like the distance you want to get no closer than when you're filming police?
I recommend about 10 to 15 feet away. Some police employees are totally fine with this. Others want you to back up. And they'll tell you to back up. They'll be, you need to back up or else I'll command you, back up. And you should back up. Your job is to stay there and record that incident. It's not to get arrested and have that person kind of fend for themselves. So if a police officer tells me to back up, I comply with that, and I verbally comply with that. I say, yes, sir, I'm going to back up, or yes, ma'am, I'm going to back up, and I'll point that camera towards my feet and watch my feet backing up, so that there is, there's that record of me backing up, that I'm not too close, that I complied with the police employee's instructions. So that's one thing I definitely recommend. Take 2 or 3 steps back, and then ask them, is this a good distance? And if they say no, take a couple more steps. It's kind of a game at that point in time. It's whatever they want. Like I said, your job is to stay there and record that incident. It's not to get in trouble. It's not to challenge the officer. It's really not to try to be the big dog in this. But there is a reasonable distance. I mean, if you're recording a police incident and it's something simple like a traffic stop, and the officer tells you have to go 2 blocks away, well, that's a little ridiculous. That there definitely is a line there. Like 30 feet is the most that I would ever go away from an incident. And that can change if it's like someone gets caught with a gun or something like that, and they say they need more space. It might be a little longer. I've asked police employees, like, how far would you like me to go? Give me a landmark of how far would you like me to go? And most police employees, it's reasonable how far they want you to stay away. I've only had it once or twice where they're like, you need to go a block away, and it's like, no, I don't, and I'm just gonna take a couple steps back and I'm just gonna stand here. I guess challenge them a little bit if it's absolutely ridiculous, but otherwise try to keep it as cool and calm as possible.
I'm really glad you brought up that thing about, stating that you're going to comply and filming your feet, because that's something I never would have thought of, But yeah, it's very important that people document everything they're doing as well, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, you have to create that record of you doing the right thing too. That you're not there to try to stop the police from doing their job. You're just there to document it. And if you show stuff like that you're complying, that you're backing up, that you're friendly, it shows that you're not trying to impede what they're doing. You're just trying to exercise your right to record police-citizen encounters.
And I imagine if you are polite and comply with requests like that, it also shows a jury that you're not somebody out looking for a gotcha moment with the police, that you're, an objective eye monitoring the situation.
Exactly. I mean, if it shows you're non-confrontational, that you're calm, cool, and collected, that jury might weigh on that a little different than if you were, yelling at an officer or acting, in a hyped up manner or something like that. It's all about how the jury is going to perceive a video, or how the media or how the public court of opinion is going to perceive a video. Because if you have something going out there, and it should happen up in the 5 o'clock news, and you're out there swearing at an officer, it's going to look really bad on you. It's going to take the focus off the bad actions of the officer and place them on the actions of yourself, and that's not the objective of CopWatch at all.
And I should mention too that in a court of law, juries just typically want to believe a police officer. So when your evidence that you have that is contrary to the officer's narrative is admitted, that evidence starts from a place of, well, this is probably bullshit, because we see that officer on the stand and he sounds really good and he looks really good, but they're trained to be that way. They're trained to look and sound good in court. And then you have the kind of natural bias of the typical citizen to believe a police officer over another citizen, which I don't get at all. Police officers are people too, but it is what it is. So it's really important for that regard, because your evidence starts in the whole thing at a disadvantage as far as biases and stuff. So,
So. It's not you have to prove what happened to your friends, because your friends are going to believe you, and they've seen police employees act in a certain manner. It's you have to prove this to total strangers that may not have had the experiences and may not live in the same neighborhood that you do, or that you're passing through or whatever, and you have to try to convince them that what the police officer did is wrong. So, and like you said, most people see that person in a costume with a badge and automatically believe them. It's just that outfit they're wearing. People want to believe that police officers are doing the right thing, because it's really hard for people to think that these people that are supposed to protect, me and my neighbors and my community are out there doing bad things, that they're not doing their job, that my tax money is being wasted, that people are ending up in cages because of the actions of one person. It's really hard to try to get people to see that have not experienced that in their entire life.
Right. So you kind of went through a scenario with multiple persons filming. Now let's talk about what can be a little more dangerous and a little more challenging, is filming police by yourself. How would you go through that situation? And what would you do differently than if there was another person there?
So sporadic CopWatch is a little more risky. Personally, what I do is if I see something going down, like I said, if I see someone pull over on the side of the road, I'll go park somewhere, and when I approach the scene, I'll have my cell phone or camera out, usually my cell phone, using bamboozer or something like that. And I'll walk up to the scene calmly. I'm not running to the scene, because that really freaks out police employees for some reason. And I'll walk calmly to the scene, both hands out of my pockets, one hand holding the phone, so it's obvious in view. I want that police employee to see me with that phone. I want them to know that I am recording, that it could be live streamed, and I want to make my presence known. I will point that cell phone at that police officer to capture them, not at the individual that's being stopped. I want that individual to know that I'm not there to record them. Like there are plenty of times where I've come up on a traffic stop, and I'll stand kind of near the passenger side door of the vehicle, and just to let the driver know that I'm not focusing on them. I don't care about them. I do care about them, but that's not the intent of my my recording. I'm not out there to get the driver in trouble, to blast the driver's face all over the internet. I'm more concerned about the police employee. So that's how I personally do it. And if someone's stopped in the street, I'll stand there, like kind of at the side of the suspect, I suppose you could say, the person being detained or whatever, just to let them know that I'm pointing that camera at the police officer. Sometimes I'll talk to the person, say, "Hey man, I'm here for you. I'm just here to make sure that things are going okay. If you want to talk to me afterwards, I'm totally down for that. I kind of want to get your side of the story too." So that's a great way to start off right there. And I mean, I'll continue to film until that situation is over. If someone's pulled over, I'm going to stand there until that person takes off, or if they're arrested, until that police car, takes that person to the detainment center, wherever they're going. Because I want to capture all that I can. If they search the vehicle, I'll stay and capture that, to make sure that they did a proper search of the vehicle, that they weren't acting outside of their authority, stuff like that. So and if you can, during a sporadic CopWatch, let somebody know where you're at. Text a trusted friend or whatever like that. Say, "Hey, I'm doing CopWatch on this street and this street, or outside of the Super America on University Avenue," or whatever you can say, so somebody knows where you are and what the police department is involved with this. So that's what I think about that.
Cool. So when you're doing a one-person scenario, it's really just about making sure somebody knows where you are, that they have a text message in their phone that they can show that, hey, here's where I am and here's what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. So that, okay, there's an app out there called Cell 411, which maybe at the end we can talk about, several reasons why people should have this, but I know it's useful because one of the options is that you can select that you're having a police encounter. Right. And so you can just hit a button on your phone, and everybody in your network knows you're having a police encounter, and it GPSes where exactly you're having that police encounter.
Right, and you can also use live streaming mode with Cell 411 now.
Oh, really?
Yes,
that I did not know.
Yep. Yeah. There was a recent update that you can live stream either publicly or to certain people what's going on. So you can have a friend watch that, and that live stream also saves on their phone so that they can download it, and they have a copy of that just in case something happens to you. So yes, Cell 411 is an app I highly recommend people use.
Cool. So what we've kind of explained how to CopWatch properly. Is there anything else you want to add as far as, techniques, methods, things to watch out for that might taint the evidence you're collecting in the eyes of a jury or a judge?
Sure, yeah. Like I said, try to remain calm. Even if you see the officer doing something wrong, don't start yelling. Just capture it. As hard as it is to do. I've been in situations where it's been just almost impossible to keep my mouth shut, just because of what I've seen. But I knew that the content that I'd capture would be useful later to somebody, and it has been. So yeah, just try to remain as cool and calm as possible, and know your limits. Know what you're comfortable with. If you're comfortable getting 15 feet away, fine. If you're comfortable just sitting in your car with your cell phone pointed at the interaction, great. I don't think there's really any wrong way to cop watch per se. I think there are better ways to cop watch to bring to legal land. But I think as long as somebody is out there filming, that's a very positive thing. I am of the personal belief that I would rather capture something and not need it than to need something and not have it. So I would say capture every incident possible. The worst that's going to happen is you delete it off your phone. That's pretty much it. I mean, I hope more people are starting to take up this cause and realizing that cop watching is extremely important to keep your community and other communities that you might be passing through or visiting a little more safe.
Now I want to talk, we've kind of talked about proper techniques, and I'm sure the burning question on everybody's mind is, how dangerous is this? How dangerous can it get? How safe can it be? And what can you do to make it a safe endeavor? And I'm kind of moving to that right now, even though we have a good 45 minutes left. I'm moving to that right now because I think this is like the real important thing is, how do you stay safe doing this? How do you ensure your safety? And then the second part of this is going to be, what do you do when an officer tries to harass you or intimidate you when you're filming cops? So let's go into that.
Sure. It's all how safe you want to make it. I mean, that's why I recommend the live streaming. I have only had one really negative encounter. I mean, I've had, different police employees like shine their lights in my camera or grab their crotch in front of me or something like that. But I've only once had a particularly negative encounter where a police employee took away my camera and charged me with a crime, which I was able to defend myself with the help of the Minnesota ACLU in court. But yeah, most of my interactions have been completely safe. Most of the time, I'll log up with a camera, and it makes that situation level real quick, and the police leave. That has been my experience. Others have had different experiences. I can't speak for every community how easy it would be. Some communities it's really safe. Other communities it's a little more risky. It really all depends on the community you're in. But your safety is in your own hands. Like I said before, let someone know where you are. Live stream, and it will make that process much more safer for yourself.
So definitely tell them that you're live streaming. Definitely let them know that even if they take your phone, the video is still being collected somewhere that they can't get to.
You can do that. I personally don't let them know I'm live streaming. I just pretty much stand there and in a calm, cool way. I kind of don't want them to know if I'm live streaming or not, because there might be another that doesn't live stream, and I kind of want to keep them guessing. I want the police employees to think, well, is this person live streaming? Is not. Let's just leave this area and let's just end this right here. So that's why I don't tell them. You can tell them if you want. Like I said, there's really no wrong way to do this.
Okay. So I guess you said it's only happened once, and to other people it's happened more, where police have actually gone to the extent of taking away your camera and charging you with a crime. And I'm guessing there's people who've been outright assaulted for
right.
cop watching as well. And when that kind of situation comes up, like, how a person might be sitting there wondering, should I leave? Should I not leave? There's a person here who's probably going to get fucked up just because of how hostile this cop's being. If I leave, that person is completely on their own. But if I don't leave, am I in danger? Like, how do you deal with that situation? How do you know, first of all, when to leave? And if you have an officer taking a threatening posture towards you or a hostile posture towards you, like, what can you do to regain control of the situation?
Like I said before, it's all up to the individual. I'll never ask anybody to put themselves in a situation that could put them in harm or that they're uncomfortable with. If you feel you need to leave, that's what you need to do. I personally don't leave just because, I am okay with the risk associated with not leaving. I am fine with spending a night in jail. Others aren't, and I understand that. Some people have jobs to get to. They don't have the vacation time they could take, stuff like that. So it really is all up to the individual. I won't chastise anybody for keeping themselves safe. I would like to see people stay on the scene, but I know that's not always possible. If you have 10 police employees against you, maybe your best bet is to back away. I don't know. I can't make that call for everybody. I can only make it for myself. I expect others to only be able to make that for themselves as well. So I'd say if you start getting harassed by a police officer, to try to calm them down, to use a calm voice, not yell back, just say, officer, I'm just here, exercising my First Amendment right to film police. I don't mean anybody any harm. I just want to record this, and I'm just going to stay over here and be quiet, and I'm not here to hurt anybody. And that sometimes can calm them down. Not always, but sometimes. Sometimes an officer will stand right next to you to try to intimidate you, and that's happened to me. And I'll just stand there and keep doing, keep recording. Just because a stranger's standing next to me doesn't mean I'm going to be intimidated enough to shy away. So that is one way to deal with it. And, another way is to try to encourage other people to come to the scene, like you said, with cell 411 or text your friends, or maybe get some other people that are just community members to just come over and stand in the area. The more people you have at a CopWatch location, the less likely the police are to use intimidation or force against you.
So at that point, maybe when an officer is taking a hostile or aggressive stance toward you, and it's looking like the situation could turn really bad for you, like I know you said you kind of like to keep them guessing, but would you say at that point, telling them they're being live streamed is a really good strategy?
It definitely could be. It might get them to think, well, my actions are being out live right now. And when you say live stream, they don't know if it's Facebook Live or if it's Bambuser live stream or whatever other service. And especially nowadays with certain things like the Philando Castile aftermath being live streamed on Facebook, police officers may shy away just because they know the impact that had. So they may not want to continue to intimidate you after hearing that they're being live streamed. Right.
Now, when you're doing it, like you said, everybody's different, and I certainly, if the event starts becoming triggering for you, it's a good idea to walk away because it's very hard to stay in control. It's very hard to stay calm. But like in your own cop watching, do you have kind of a barometer you follow or a meter you follow where, okay, when these certain things are starting to happen, that's my time to go away, or like just kind of rules of thumb of okay, this is when the situation's really getting to where I need to leave, or this is when the situation's getting to where I need to do certain things, and what are those certain things, just for yourself?
I mean, it's all situational for me. I'm more likely to allow myself to be arrested if need be, if I have, say, vacation time or something like that. I might back down a little. Let's say if I have something like a family reunion or a plane trip the next day, I might not be so adamant about standing my ground. Everything is situational. Everything is individual. I really don't have a barometer. So I put myself in situations where I was just about to get arrested, and I've also backed down because I've had stuff to do. So it's very much situational for everybody.
For the person who, because I think a lot of people have this situation, they can't take time off from work and they can't get arrested, and of course nobody wants to get insulted. Are there certain cues in each situation that tell you, let's just go to a time when you do have work the next morning, you can't afford to get arrested, are there certain cues that you notice and always kind of take as an indicator, like, okay, this happened, this tells me, or this was said, this tells me it's time to get out of here now?
Yeah, one of the biggest keys to me is when a police employee will come up real nice and close to you, like right in front of you, to intimidate you. There are a lot of bad things that can happen when a police officer gets that close to you, especially if they do it right in front of your camera, because then they can claim that you made a fast movement or something like that, because they're so close and the camera view is essentially blocked. Even if they're wearing a body camera, if they're only a foot and a half away from you, that body camera only captures a very little part of you. It might capture just like your chest or something like that. It won't capture your arms, and they can say, well, he took a swing at me, or she did this, and something like that. So yeah, the biggest cue is if they get nice and close to you.
Okay, so if an officer does get really close to you like that, that's typically a time to leave. If, say, you want to try to press the envelope just a little further, like, what can you do to deal with the fact that the officer is standing right next to you? Is like, how would you handle that? Or how do you handle that?
I can think of one time that an officer, ordered me to leave when I was standing on a public sidewalk, filming him parked on a public sidewalk, and I said, "No, I'm going to stand right here. I'm just going to continue to film you." And that it made him think a little bit, and he actually took off from that location. So, I mean, again, it's all situational. It's what the individual thinks might work for them at that point in time. Other things you can do is to say, "No, I'm going to take a couple steps back here, and I'm going to continue what I'm doing. This is my right to do this. It's all what you feel like as a person. Keep yourself safe is the main thing."
If you move away from them and then they move up on you, and you take a couple steps and then they move up on you, would you say at that point in time you're showing, like, when that shows up on the camera, would you say that looks like shenanigans to a jury, to the media? Like, is that a good way to handle that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if a police employee is following you, and it obviously on video shows that they're trying to intimidate you, I mean, that's grounds right there that they're trying to intimidate you, that they're doing something wrong. I've never had that happen to me. I've seen that happen to other people though. Like there's some police employees that will walk with the person if they're trying to walk away. I mean, I've seen people leave a situation. The police employee still tries to intimidate them by walking next to them or behind them, or as close to them as possible. And that to me, and hopefully to a jury, would show that police employee is just out to intimidate somebody. That there's no protection in that. There's no that they're trying to continue a bad situation. They're not letting it go. I mean, if someone's trying to walk away and you're intimidating them, you're essentially trying to stop them from walking away. That looks really bad on the police employee.
And that's a scary situation to be in, where you're like, okay, so I'm going to leave, and then they just like walk with you, walk next to you. Two things that occur to mind is, first of all, it's going to create a lot of apprehension and even panic in yourself. To a typical person in this situation, it's going to create that. And then the second thing is who knows what's going to happen at that point. I'm guessing you've been in that situation before, and is there, like, what have you done to, like, keep yourself calm, and what have you done to try to make that situation safer?
Just keep the camera rolling, keep the camera on the officer. Just know that there are other people out there that will support you if something bad happens, that if you should get arrested. There's networks all over the place that will come to your support if you should happen to be kidnapped and caged by a stranger wearing a costume and a badge. That's probably the biggest thing that's helped me. Is I know that there's people all over the country that will support me, and others doing the same thing.
And obviously we talked about Communities United Against Police Brutality, who are in Minneapolis. They're a great organization for supporting you. But let's say you're not in Minneapolis, and first off, how do you find the organization in your town that does that? And also, a lot of cities don't have organizations that do that. So first, how do you find one in your area? And if you can't find one in your area, what are organizations you can look to that will stick up for you, that will advocate for you, that will, help you with your situation?
Sure. One way to find the way that I found even Communities United Against Police Brutality is I looked up, or I Googled, police misconduct Minneapolis. An organization popped up, and then I became involved with them. And that can work in many different cities. Like if you Googled, police accountability, Portland, you'd probably find just, quite a few of them. But there are national organizations that people can hook up with, like CopBlock.org, CopWatch.org, Photography's Not a Crime. Those are great organizations. If you need to share content or maybe get some help, they might be able to point you into a local organization or help you hook up with a local activist that knows the system a little bit more than you do. So yeah, I definitely check out those organizations.
Yeah, because you'll generally find, even if there's not an organization, there's a known activist or two in your town that can help you.
Yeah.
They may not have a focus on this area, but they will. They do definitely know more than you, and they definitely, they have connections, and they can definitely help you. So.
Right. Yeah, I just recently, Jacob Crawford from WeCopWatch.org sent somebody my way who was looking for a organization around here to team up with, and he's in St. Louis, so he doesn't really know what's going on in Minneapolis. But I was able to hook this person up with a great organization here. So we're all connected somehow.
Fantastic. So people really need to know they're not on their own. I mean, you outside of the activist community, you're not going to hear that you're actually that there's actually resources, but there are, and some of these organizations you talked about are great places to go to for that. When it comes to safety, most people would say that the most important thing is knowing what your rights are. And as part of Communities United Against Police Brutality, I know you're one of their Know Your Rights trainers.
Right.
I went through that process too to become a Know Your Rights trainer. But specifically as a cop watcher, knowing your rights is really important, and knowing your rights as they pertain to cop watching is really important. So can you take us through what those rights are and how to use them, how to exercise them? Definitely.
Now some rights do vary state to state, so you should check your state's rights no matter what. I'm not an attorney. I can't say this is all across the board. I can give you a general overview, and I can tell you what your rights are in Minnesota specifically, just because I have the experience with that. But the biggest thing you can do is always remain calm, if possible. Just try to keep that situation calm, because police officers are not always the best at maintaining calmness in a situation. So there really are three different types of police encounters that most people have, which would be like a street encounter, a traffic stop, and the police knocking at your door. And I'll briefly walk you through your rights during those situations. So if you're stopped on the street, a police officer might be like, hey, can we talk real quick, or hey, I got a question for you, whatever. my advice is if a police officer stops you on the street, to say, am I being detained or am I free to go? And if you're free to go, you can just leave that situation. You have no legal reason to be held there. If you're free to go. Other times you might want to talk to the police officer. I don't know. That's an individual thing. I personally just don't like talking to any police officer. I don't want to help them in their investigations. I want as little to do with them as possible. So if I get stopped, I'm going to say, hey, am I being detained? If they say no, I'm just going to keep walking. If they say you are being detained, at least in Minnesota, you're not required to identify yourself just from being detained. You're not required to show your ID. You can just remain silent.
But as you said, these rules are different from state to state when it comes to having to identify yourself. So people should, go online and find out what the rules on that specifically are in their state. Correct?
That's right. Also, check your local ACLU. They'll have plenty of resources for you to check out there. So you can check that out. That's probably the best resource that I could recommend for Know Your Rights in different states besides Minnesota. So yeah, that's a very good place to send people. It's a great resource. I'm going to move on to like a traffic stop. That's probably the best, the most common way that people get their first interaction with a police employee. So during a traffic stop, I recommend that people keep their hands visible and flat on the steering wheel at all times. So if you're pull over to the side of the road as quickly as possible. I've seen people charged for not pulling over fast enough. Typically, you have about a quarter block to a half a block to pull over before they can charge you with felony fleeing. So try to get over as quickly as possible. Sometimes that isn't always reasonable. Like if you're driving down a freeway and there's the concrete barricades on both sides, you're not going to be able to get over in a half a block. That's just not reasonable at all. But pull over as soon as you can, really. And I personally recommend that you only roll down your car window 2 to 3 inches. Just enough to pass your driver's license and insurance card and talk to the cop. It reduces the risk of that police officer saying that they smelled something coming out of the vehicle, stuff like that. And one of the things that I've personally learned through my experiences is when that police officer comes to the car window to ask you what you've done wrong, the police officer is going to be like, do you know why I pulled you over? And most people will say something like, yeah, I was speeding, or yeah, I wasn't wearing my seatbelt, or something like that, which is really, really detrimental to yourself. Because if you want to fight that case in any way, you have just admitted what you did wrong. And it most likely will have been captured on camera from that police officer, whether it's the dash cam or their body cam. You've just ruined your own case. So the best way to come back with from that question is with the question. Say, no, officer, why did you pull me over? It admits no guilt, and it gets that reason out there very quickly. Now, in Minnesota, we have to show our driver's license and proof of insurance during a traffic stop. You have to show your driver's license because driving is a privilege, not a right. Unlike with a street encounter, it's your right to walk down a sidewalk. It's not a privilege. You don't need a license to walk down the sidewalk, but you do while driving a motor vehicle. So when the police officer asks you for your driver's license and insurance or registration in some other states, tell the police officer, say, hey, my insurance is in my glove box and my ID is in my wallet. Can I reach for them now? And wait for that police officer to give you the affirmative that you can go get those. That way, it reduces the chance of the police officer mistakenly thinking that you're going for some kind of weapon or something like that. I should also say that you shouldn't take out your seatbelt if you're pulled over until that police officer instructs you to. That way, when they come up to the window, they can't say, "Oh, you don't have your seatbelt on. I'm going to give you a ticket for that." At least in Minnesota, it is illegal to drive without a seatbelt on, or be a passenger without a seatbelt on. So always keep your seatbelt on until instructed to do so. Only the driver should speak to the police officer if you're in a car with a lot of people. Passengers should remain silent and sit still. They're not the ones being investigated. Only the driver is. So if you're pulled over, tell your passengers, say, hey, just be quiet. And I would say never agree to a search of your car. The reason for this is because your car might be clean. You might not do anything wrong. You might live the most wholesome life possible. But you don't know who's been in your car and what they have, or even who owned the car before you. The person that owned the car before you might have had some stuff in the car. They might have left some stuff there, and you don't want to get caught for that. I mean, personally, I drive a former police vehicle, an old Crown Victoria. I don't know what's in there. There's no way that anybody's been that a police employee is going to search my car, just because so much stuff has been through that car, and if something got left behind, I don't want to be responsible for that. So if a police officer should ask you to get out of your car, turn off your car, roll up your windows, take your keys with you, and lock your car door afterwards. That way, they can't just go into your vehicle. They have to actually take your key and open up the door, push the button on your fob or whatever, and that makes it changes the aspects in court from them just being able to openly go into your car to having to unlock it. So yeah, definitely do
right.
that. Yeah,
right. Because when they take your keys and use them to open your locked car, basically at that point they are doing a search without your consent, and they have to justify that in court.
Correct.
I think a lot of people say, well, you ask if you're free to go or if you're detained. Well, they'll just say that they're detaining you. They can't actually do that, because when they detain you, they have to have a reason. They have to explain in court, if you challenge it, why they detained you, what they saw that led them to detain you. And, if a jury just hears them say, well, I thought this, that may not be enough, especially if if there's other holes in the officer's story or the report the officer wrote, that can really work for you. So, it's not a hopeless thing when a cop shows up. They're not going to detain you unless they know they can prove it in court, because especially if you show that you know your rights, because they know that in court they're going to have to prove they had a good reason to detain you. So, this whole thing you say about detaining, am I being detained? It's so important, because it does require a burden of proof that there was something to be suspicious of.
Yeah. I mean, one experience I have that I can think of where I actually did show my ID, just to get out of a situation quicker, was when I was leaving my apartment building one night. There was a Ramsey County Sheriff's Squad car out there, and I was walking out the building, and the police officer, or the deputy said, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? And I was like, am I being detained? He's like, no, can I see your ID? And I'm like, well, why? And he said, well, we had a break-in in the garage. We just want to make sure you live here. And, there was a couple squad cars out front, too. So I was like, well, that seems reasonable. He really would have had the authority to detain me until he figured out who I was and if I lived there. So at that point in time, I just figured, well, it'll get me out of the situation quicker if I just show him my ID. Took my ID out of my wallet, showed it to him, looked at the address, handed it right back to me, and I was on my way that quick. Didn't run it or anything, just wanted to make sure I lived there. So you have to use your, be smart about it. Know when you should show your ID and when not. If you're in a large group of people and a cop asks you for your ID, you can refuse that. And most likely nothing bad is going to happen to you. But if you're walking through an alley and all of a sudden there's 6, police officers standing there asking you for your ID and there's nobody around, I'd probably recommend giving your ID. It'll probably keep you safer. So, this, just like cop watching, is all on an individual basis. Just because you have these rights doesn't mean that they will be respected by police officers. But it is a good idea to express your rights, to state your rights, because if you go to court and you say, no, you can't search my car, and they search your car anyways, well, then that evidence can get thrown out. So it's always good to assert your rights when safe. Does that make sense to you?
That makes absolute sense because, yeah, you're right. Asserting your rights won't always work, but it's the best shot you've got.
Right.
In a perfect world, the courts wouldn't be corrupt and it would work every time. But the fact of the matter is it sometimes doesn't. But that should never discourage you from asserting your rights because it definitely gives you more favorable odds of coming out okay when things go to court. Mm-hmm. It gives your lawyer tools they can use. So
right. Yeah. And in today's use of body cams and dash cams, it is important to verbalize your rights too, and loudly. Like if an officer says, "Can I search your car?" Say, "No, you do not have my permission to search my car." Loudly, you not just mumble like, "No, I don't want you to search my car," because it could be captured by that body cam or the dash cam. Most people don't realize this, but a lot of police employees have a box they wear on their shoulder that is a microphone that is hooked up to their dash cam. It's a wireless microphone. So that captures everything you say while in a car or on foot or whatever. So it is extremely important to verbalize your rights to that police officer.
This is such important stuff. It's so important everybody learn their rights. And if take time to go and just Google Flex Your Rights. They have a phenomenal video, couple of videos about how to use your rights. Great videos. And we're down to about 10 minutes. We can go a little longer, but I kind of want to bring this home now. 2 questions have come up for me during the course of this.
Sure.
One is, I've heard people say, well, what's the point of cop watching? Cops can firebomb a nursery on video and, they won't get charged with anything. And there's some truth to that. I mean, we see cops doing horrible shit on video all the time, like murdering people, and nothing happens to them. And so there is that. But what would you say to somebody who says, well, it's just hopeless because cops won't get in trouble anyway?
You know, I disagree with that. I think it's taking a very, very long time, but there are police employees that are finally getting fired, and it's not just criminal charges. You can also go for civil damages against a police officer. So even if that police officer does not get in criminal trouble or get fired for that, you can help that person out by recovering, monetary losses with that video. I mean, my videos have been cited in civil court suits against police officers. So that shows me it is extremely important to record police officers' interactions with members of the public. Just recently, one of my videos was cited in a case in which a woman was paid out, I think, $38,000 by the St. Paul Police Department. And part of the evidence was that officer had a history of retaliating against people that filmed them. So it's not just the criminal aspect, it's also the civil aspect that people should pay attention to when filming police.
I'm really glad you brought that up because, lawsuits, unfortunately, are really the thing we have mostly when it comes to accountability because, until more cops get held accountable, which you say you see starting to happen, I think I might too, but, it is taking a long time. In the meantime, what you can hope is that there's enough lawsuits against a cop where a city just gets sick of it and kicks him to the curb. And even that's a hard process, but, it's one of the few things we have to try and enforce any accountability. And if a cop commits misconduct, they're not as good at covering it up as you would think they are. A lot of times there's some kind of smoking gun there. Right. That a lawyer who is trained in civil rights matters, and who has the knowledge can go in and find, and show a jury. Yeah,
and producing these videos and putting them out on YouTube or whatever also notifies the community that they work in about this officer's actions. They'll know to that this is a really bad cop and they have to watch themselves around this cop. So it is also helping the community know who the bad actors are. It definitely helps oust the bullies.
Exactly, very important thing. This is just kind of a matter of curiosity for me. Mm-hmm. But you've done a lot of cop watching, and in your experience, what obviously some cops have been like, okay, fine, film me, and other cops have been like really had a problem with it and been hostile and tried to intimidate you. What in your experience has that ratio been?
When I started doing this like 5-6 years, maybe 7 years ago, it was more hostile. Cops didn't understand. They really didn't understand what the point was of CopWatch. Now they're getting it. There's a lot of police employees that'll actually have me move closer. They're like, this is what I'm doing. They'll explain the situation. They've gotten more used to it. I've also had people commanders from different policing agencies around Minnesota send me copies of their policies for dash cams or body cams or stuff like that, and ask me to go over it for them because they want to do better policing. So the whole scene has changed in the past few years because of people recording police. Good cops don't seem to mind it, and the bad ones still detest it. And they'll still try to shine their light in your camera or whatever they can to thwart you from doing this. But I've seen a lot more police employees now be accepting of it, and even in some cases inviting.
Right. I've seen YouTube videos of that. I've also, since I was assaulted by police, I've had instances where I just turned on a camera. A cop showed up, I turned on my camera, and I actually had a cop say their name and badge number.
Mm-hmm.
For anybody out there who's thinking this is a constantly confrontational situation, it's not a constantly confrontational situation, and in a lot of situations it doesn't have to be. So don't be scared of that. Those situations do come up, but a lot of times this can go smooth. Don't be scared that every time you're going to do this, you're going to have to fortify yourself, and you're going to have to, deal with all of the psychological pressure and fear. Right. And, it happens sometimes, but not so much that you can't handle it. Right.
I mean, if your listeners check out my YouTube channel, if you look at some of my older videos, a lot of the police employees will be standoffish or confrontational. And then this paradigm shift happens where they're used to me and they know me, and they'll call me by name, and they'll offer information about what's going on. It completely changed, and that I attribute to the fact that I've kept up with this, that I'm not going away, that this needs to be done, and certain police employees have researched it on their own, and they realize that this does help get rid of the bad people, and so they're a lot more friendly towards me than they used to be. It's still there are some bad experiences with officers that don't want to be on film, that don't want to be held accountable, that don't want to see their colleagues and coworkers held accountable. But for the vast majority, they're a lot more friendly than they used to be.
Right. Now, you mentioned people can watch your videos, and this is a great way to end this interview. At the beginning, you said where people can find your work and where people can learn more about you and where people can get a hold of you with questions, for advice. Can you run us through those again, and then we'll wrap this up?
Definitely. So the biggest thing that I'm promoting right now is my website, which is www.TheDrewks, TheDrewks.com, which has information about cop watching, know your rights, jury nullification, different liberty aspects. I put this website together just to help educate people more. It also has a contact form if you want to contact me. You can check out my YouTube channel at youtube.com/TheDrewks. I'm on Twitter at TheDrewks, or on Facebook, which is facebook.com/TheDrewks. And I'm always eager to help people with problems they might have. It might take me a couple of days to get back to somebody. Just like I said, I'm working full time in school, social life. So don't be thwarted by that. But I try to get back to everybody that needs help as quickly as possible. So if you have a question or a concern, definitely get a hold of me. I'm all for that.
But why are you going to school and so busy? Isn't Soros paying you enough?
Yeah, I'm still waiting for my check.
I know, we all are. So the right-wingers tell us it's coming, though. So I'm sure.
I check that mailbox every day, just waiting for it.
Yep. So, well, Andrew, thank you so much for this talk. You brought up some very good things that I certainly wouldn't have thought about. And, police misconduct is a focus of mine. So if I haven't thought of it, other people certainly haven't thought of it. So you brought a lot of very good, very important stuff in today, and I appreciate it. And so much respect to you for what you do. I mean, Minneapolis and St. Paul, I don't consider it a safe town to CopWatch in. You know, it's my experience has been that, oh, sure, I mean, not out of all those cops, they can't all be bad, but it's kind of overrun with psychos that the departments can't control. And, you know, it makes it even more important what you're doing. And you were doing this back before it became more accepted and safer. And, you know, I have the utmost respect for you for that. And thank you for that. You kind of helped others blaze a trail in this area. So thank you so much for being on today. And yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and hopefully this was educational for you and your listeners.
Tim, any final thoughts?
No, I think it was a great show. Yeah, just thanks for agreeing to do it. I'm sure our listeners will really appreciate it and get a lot out of it.
For sure, thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Andrew, and you have a good afternoon.
You too, sir.
If I end up on YouTube, I'm going to be upset.